Have you ever wondered if there's an alternative to the mammogram? Most of my patients have. So today we're taking my wife into OC Breast Wellness in Fountain Valley to get a test done. This test, for some people, they may choose to use as an alternative to the mammogram. Now there are a couple things I'd like to point out that most patients are curious about before we get to the test and you see my wife's tatas. Does a mammogram hurt? Well, I don't know for sure, since I'm not a woman, but I can imagine that it would. I've seen it done and have had many patients that tell me how painful it actually is. Are they accurate? Well, that is a loaded question. According to some statistics, they say they're about 70% accurate in detecting abnormalities. What those abnormalities are isn't very clear. In addition, there are also reported to have a false positive rate of about 50%, meaning that in half of the all positive breast cancer mammograms that they run, 50% turn out to be wrong. So of that 78%, 50% of those are nothing. Talk about scaring the bejesus out of you. Another thing that a lot of patients ask about is, do they cause cancer? Well, this is another loaded question. According to some unmentionable government agencies that I'd rather not talk about, and mammogram official sites, they do not cause cancer. Or I should say, they say the amount is insignificant. But here are a couple of facts to consider. In order to take an X-ray image of the breast, which is a soft tissue, the settings of the X-ray machine, specifically the MAS and the KVP, different subject, have to be adjusted so that more of the radiation is absorbed by the soft tissue in order to get a proper image. So instead of doing an image that blasts right through and none of it gets absorbed, they're actually slowing it down so more of it gets absorbed into your breast tissue and then thus getting absorbed into your body, contributing to, well, I'm not going to say it. The breasts are a more sensitive area than most other areas. Now, I'm not going to say mammograms cause breast cancer because that might get me into trouble, but I will say that we do know X-rays cause cancer. According to some statistics I've read by other doctors and lay people, for example, they estimate that mammograms may increase your risk of cancer by 1% each year you have them done. So over 15 years, that's 15%. Most women start getting them done around the age of 40. Most breast cancers are discovered around the age of 60. One last thing to consider. Mammograms have been the standard of care since 1960. And the last time they were updated was in 1980. That's about 40 years ago. Now, I will say with digital X-rays, you are most likely getting less radiation than you were before. So that's a fairly significant improvement. So I'm not going to say there is an alternative to the mammogram because it is the standard of care. But if you ask my wife or some other people, they might say something else. So what is the other test you might choose to do? That is precisely what the OC Breast Wellness Center is providing.
Okay, so here we are, we're here. Are you ready to get your tatas pictured and groped by a machine?
No, my boobs freezed off in pictures.
So here we go, check it out.
Let me say before we get started, we paid for this exam. We are not being sponsored, they didn't pay us. I'm just doing this out of the goodness of my heart. So they and other breast wellness imaging centers have two different procedures that they offer as the breast exam. The first is a thermography. This uses a FLIR, F-L-I-R camera, which is basically a fancy heat-setting camera that can look at body temperature and thus circulation and any inflammatory processes going on in the body. This can be used as a great screening tool to assess any potential current or preceding problems that may develop. A lot of alternative doctors also use this to look at the entire body to see if and where you have inflammation, such as the gut. The second process they use is a very high-tech form of palpation, which is basically touching. So they use what is called the Sure Touch Palpation Breast Exam. It's reported to be 1,000 times more sensitive than your fingertips in finding a breast abnormality. You can see the waveform that comes up on the screen. This is of my wife. What you want to see is nice gradual waves. Any sharp spikes indicates an abnormality that might need to be investigated. My personal recommendation is that if you're going to get your breasts imaged or palpated or thermographied or whatever, then do both. They do have the option of doing one or the other, but more is always better. Well, not always, but many times. The nurse that did the exam on my wife did a great job in explaining everything. It took about an hour for the whole exam for the thermography and the SureTouch, and she explained everything in very good detail. So the exam went really well. There's certain things that you can and cannot do before you get your breast exam. And for our exam, my wife's exam, I just filmed, it was very informative. Now she explained the screening process or screening tests like this. And this includes breast self-exams, mammograms, thermograms, and the SureTouch. The screening tests are just to find out if you have a needle in your haystack and where it is, like using a metal detector to see if there's something else there. It doesn't tell us what it is. The second step when anything is ever abnormal is getting an ultrasound, a diagnostic ultrasound. So this is where the diagnostic ultrasounds come in. If any abnormality is found on any of those exams, the next step is pretty much always going to be an ultrasound and/or possibly an MRI. So that usually begs the question from most patients, well, why don't I just start with an ultrasound? Because that is like looking for the needle in the haystack without the metal detector. You don't know where it is. That's what the screening tests are for. So there you have it, another tool in your box to fight against breast cancer. Now go examine your breasts and do it regularly at the same time of every month. I'm Dr. Craig Mortensen. Be healthy, be happy.